Hello, and welcome to the 10th in this series of Django screencasts called Django from the Ground Up. In this episode, we're going to be discussing some of the more advanced features in our social graph model, in our social graph application. So keep in mind that this entire site, the whole project, is all open source. If you go to startthedark.com and scroll down to the bottom, click on open source, you'll find links to the tracker, issue tracker, and to a repository, and you can also use the site if you'd like. Anyway, I'm going to take sort of a different approach to this episode than some of the other ones. It's becoming more and more difficult for me to get the entire contents of what I want to cover done in one episode. So what I'm going to do this time, and actually probably for several of the subsequent episodes, is I'm just going to fast forward here to the latest code, the code that's in the Git repository, and I'm going to highlight the features, the functionality of the parts that are the most interesting, so that we can get on to more of the other things like deployment and how to automatically set that up and do the other things. So, sort of the next stage that I took was to what I wanted to do was create a list of the most recent users that have signed up. So if we go to the site, we'll see the list here under latest users. And now this is just a standard list of users, so I figured let's use a generic view. So where you'll find that is in the root URL configuration. You'll see that there is accounts latest mapped to object list, which is a generic view called object list. I've wrapped that in the login required decorator right in the URL configuration because it's easy to do that. In the query set, I've queried for all of the users ordered by the date joined descending, and we're paginating by 50, and we're allowing empty. So if there's no users, we'll still render the page, and we're calling that user list. And then if we go into user list, our template, which is under auth, it's under templates auth user list. So if this makes it any more clear, sorry, I was in the wrong directory. But if we go to templates, we'll see that the new directory structure is that it goes events, profile, social graph, registration, and then down here is auth. And in there we've got user list. So if we're looking at user list, we've got our pagination tags, which if you're unfamiliar with Django pagination, please see my second screencast called Django pagination. It's not in this Django from the ground up series of screencasts, but it's it'll get you set up on how to use pagination. So that's sort of beyond the scope of this project. But also you see that I've got social graph tags. So let's take a look at that first, just so we have an idea of what we've got available to us. Now the first two things here, this dict entry for item node and do dict entry for item, this is what we call a template tag, and it's a very generic tag. I think I originally took the base portion of it from Django tagging. What this allows us to do is, given a dictionary of objects in the context of the template, we can get specific items out of that dictionary given a key. So if that doesn't make sense, I'll sort of show by example here. But first, let's just cover the one other template tag this gives us. We've got friends for user, and what this is we're going to split the contents of the what we get as input from the tag. So the first token, the first part of the split will be friends for user, the second will be user, the third will be as, and the fourth will be friend dict. And so we take those things and we care about the first thing, we care about this user, and the fourth thing, or in the third thing, because it's 0 indexed, as friend dict. So we pass the string user and the string friend dict into friends for user node. Inside of friends for user node, we take in the user string and the friend dict string here, and we assign it as state variables on the object. And then we provide a render node so that when Django goes to render the template, it can do this. So what this does here is it actually searches through the context and looks up the variable name that it was given here. So in this case, it's self.user, which is the string user. And that actually resolves to what the template has in its context, which is going to be user most of the time, since we've got the user context processor available on settings by default. And then what it does is it sets in the context of the template to the name that we specified right here as frienddict in our example, it sets a dictionary of usernames to user objects based on getPeopleUserFollows, which we've imported from the socialgraph.util, which we created together. So, putting this all into context, let's go and explore the user list page. Now remember, this is just a straight generic view that's creating this page. So we're doing our regular block title, we're doing our load pagination and social graph, and then we do newest users, and then we do this tag here. We say friends for user as frienddict, and what that's doing is that's grabbing all of the users' friends, meaning the people that they follow, and it's assigning it into the context variable called frienddict. So then we iterate over all of the users that are given to the template, and it's given in the default name of object list. And if you want to know more about that, you can go to the Django generic views documentation, and you'll be able to see if you want to customize the name of this variable or whatever. That's easy to do. And then what we're going to do is we want to extract one entry out of that dictionary, the dictionary that we created here is as frienddict. We're going to extract the entry from this frienddict dictionary with the key of person.username, and then we're going to save that back into the context as friend. So if you want to think about in regular Python, it would look like this. It would say frienddict and then person.username. And then we're setting that equal to friend like that. And so that's sort of, if you want to think about the equivalent, that's what it would look like. Anyway, then we create a little div here, and we display the person, which, if you'll just imagine, do you remember how we went and we created a include tag for our event? We can just imagine we did the exact same thing for person. And if we want to just quickly look at that tag, it's just a very simple, it gives the link to their profile, and it gives the username, and it truncates it at 12 characters, and it shows an image of that person. So anyways, so we're showing persons by using an include tag, and then we're going to say if that person isn't equal to the logged in person. So if it's somebody other than yourself, then we're going to give you the ability to follow them or unfollow them. And so the way we do that is we create a form with a single button inside of it. And so remember, we have this friend variable in our context. We can say if the friend variable in our context is if it's something, if it's not null or none, or if it exists, then we're going to post this form to the URL unfollow that person. So sg unfollow is social graph unfollow with the username. Otherwise, if that conditional failed, so they're actually not one of our friends, then we're going to post this to the URL sgfollow. And then the value here that we display for the user interface is going to say unfollow or follow. Now let's go and look into the, let me undo any of these changes I made to the template so we don't get screwed up. And then if we go to the views, let's look at the follow and unfollow. So far it's very straightforward. We've got a request and a username. And as you can imagine, the URL has a named URL pattern that has username in it. And then we do a get object or 404 on the user for the username. And then we do a get or create. And that will return a tuple of the actual user link and whether it was created or not. And we also I also created a convenience function called getNext, which if you look up here, simply looks in the post values for a variable called next, and if it doesn't find it, it looks in the get values for a variable called next, and then if it doesn't find one there, it looks at where does your browser say in your headers, where does your browser say that you just came from. So one of those three methods is very likely to have an answer of where to go next. And so that's what we assign into this next variable. And if that fails, then we check to see whether it's equal to the same thing as the current URL that you're at, because we're going to eventually be redirecting to a new URL, correct? And if we try and redirect you to the same URL that you're at, it's going to infinitely try and redirect you, if that makes any sense. So we have to check and make sure that it's not going to do that. So anyways, so we check for that, and if it's going to be like that, we add a message to your message set and say that you are now following a person, and that person is user.username. And if, like I say, if these two requirements are met, we can just redirect you to the next page, whether you've specified that in a post variable or a get variable, or whether it's the refer based on your HTTP headers. And then we go and we render a message here. This is if everything in the next stuff failed and we couldn't find anything to send you next, we'll render a you have followed ABC person template. It's exactly the same thing as for the unfollow. For the unfollow, we actually do a get, and if we get it, we delete, and we say deleted equals true. Otherwise, we catch the exception that there was nothing to get, and we'll say deleted equals false. So if you tried to unfollow someone and you weren't following them already, then we catch that and we just sort of note it. And then we do the exact same thing. We get the next place to go to, and we go there if possible. Otherwise, we display a place for the information that just occurred to be displayed to you. So all of that put together brings us back to this user list page. Let's just sort of review. First of all, we get all of the currently logged in users' friends as a dictionary. Then we iterate over all of the new users into the system. We see whether the current user that we're displaying is one of the currently logged in users' friends. We display that person. If they are not the actual user, we can display the option to either follow them or unfollow them. And so let's tab over and see how this all works on the site. So as you see, here's a list of the sort of the newest users, and it gives us an option to either follow or unfollow people. Now it looks like I'm already subscribed to, for example, Jay Tauber of Pinax fame. So what I can do is, since it says unfollow, I click on unfollow, and it redirected me to that. It posted a value to that URL that we specified, and it noticed that where I came from before was this page. So once it actually deleted the object, it redirected me back to this page, and it added the message to my message set saying, "You are no longer following Jay Tauber." So there we go. And it also, if we look here, it says now it gives us the option to refollow them. So I can click follow, and again, we are good to go. So I really hope that I didn't go too quickly, but I got to cover a lot of ground for the remaining parts of this screencast series, and I'd love to hear any feedback that you have. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.